Silas Brennan dropped to his knees in the blood-stained snow. A child lay curled beneath the pine tree. 6 years old, maybe less. Her lips had turned the color of bruised plums. Her tiny chest barely moved. He ripped off his coat and wrapped her tight against his body. "Don't you die on me," he whispered. "Don't you dare." He didn't know that saving this child would cost him everything he had left and give him everything he never knew he needed. If you've ever believed in second chances, stay with me until the end. Subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from tonight? I want to know how far this story travels. The morning had started like any other for Silas Brennan. He walked the fence line with his rifle across his shoulder, checking for breaks after the storm. 4 years alone on this ranch had taught him routine. Routine kept a man from thinking too much. Routine kept the ghosts quiet. The snow crunched beneath his boots. His breath hung in the air like smoke. That's when he saw the red stain. At first, Silas thought it was blood from a hunt. Coyotes, maybe. Or wolves dragging down a deer. He shifted his rifle and moved closer, his eyes scanning the tree line. Then his heart stopped. A child. A little girl curled up beneath a low-hanging pine half buried in snow. Her black hair was matted with ice. Her small hands were tucked under her chin, frozen in prayer or desperation, he couldn't tell which. Silas dropped his rifle and ran. He fell to his knees beside her, his hands shaking as he brushed the snow from her face. Her skin was gray, her lips were purple. But when he pressed his fingers to her throat, he felt it a pulse. Faint as a whisper, but there. "Oh God." His voice cracked. "Oh dear God." He tore off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her small body. She weighed nothing, like holding a bundle of dry sticks. He pressed her against his chest, willing his warmth into her frozen bones. "Stay with me," he said. "You hear me? Stay with me." He didn't run. Running would jostle her too much. But he walked faster than he'd ever walked in his life, his boots punching through the snow with every step. The cabin was half a mile away. It felt like 20. Inside, Silas laid the child on the bed closest to the stove. He threw wood into the fire until the flames roared. Then he heated water-soaked rags and pressed them gently against her hands and feet. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, little one." Her eyes fluttered. Silas leaned closer. "That's it. Wake up now. You're safe." Her lips moved. A sound came out so soft he almost missed it. "Shema." Silas didn't know the word, but he understood the tone. She was calling for her mother. "She ain't here," he said gently. "But I got you. You're gonna be all right." The child's eyes opened dark as coal, wide with fear. She tried to sit up, tried to scramble away from him, but her body was too weak. She collapsed back against the pillow, trembling. "Easy now." Silas held up his hands, showing her he meant no harm. "Easy. I ain't gonna hurt you." She stared at him, her chest heaving with shallow breaths. "You got a name?" he asked. She didn't answer. "That's all right." He pulled the blanket higher around her shoulders. "You don't gotta talk, just rest." He sat in the chair by the stove and watched her through the night. Every few hours he checked her breathing, added wood to the fire, pressed warm rags to her cold skin. By morning her color had improved. By afternoon she was sitting up watching him with those wary dark eyes. She still hadn't spoken a word. 2 days passed. The storm showed no sign of letting up. Snow piled against the cabin walls, blocking the door, sealing them inside together. Silas rationed his supplies, jerky dried beans, the last of the coffee. He gave the child the bigger portions and told himself he wasn't hungry. She ate like a wild animal. At first stuffing food into her mouth with both hands, her eyes darting around the room as if expecting someone to snatch it away. Silas pretended not to notice. On the second night she spoke. "Wren." Silas looked up from the fire he was stoking. "What's that?" "My name." Her voice was small, but steady. "Wren." He nodded slowly. "That's a pretty name, like the bird." She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. "I'm Silas," he said. "Silas Brennan." "Silas." She tested the word carefully like it was something fragile. "That's right." Wren pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Where's my mother?" The question hit Silas like a punch to the gut. He didn't have an answer. Didn't know if the child's mother was alive or dead, searching or buried under snow somewhere in the wilderness. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'm going to keep you safe until we find out. You understand?" Wren stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, twice, and closed her eyes. Silas sat back in his chair, his heart aching in ways he hadn't felt since Clara died. 4 years. 4 years since he'd buried his wife and son in the field behind the barn. 4 years since he'd sworn he'd never let himself care about anyone again. And now this. A child. A stranger's child. Sleeping in his cabin, trusting him to keep her alive. He rubbed his face with both hands and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The third morning, Silas was splitting wood outside when he heard it. A sound like something heavy dragging through snow. He set down his axe and reached for the rifle propped against the cabin wall. His eyes scanned the white horizon, looking for movement. There. A figure emerged from the blinding whiteness. Tall, broad-shouldered, stumbling forward with the desperate determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. A woman. Silas didn't move, didn't raise his rifle, just watched as she staggered closer each step, seeming to cost her more than she had to give. She was Apache. He could see that now. Her long black hair hung loose around her shoulders, tangled with ice and dried blood. Her buckskin dress was torn, revealing wounds beneath whip marks, knife cuts, bruises that bloomed purple and black across her arms. She stopped 10 feet away, swaying on her feet. Her eyes dark and wild, fixed on Silas, with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You have my daughter." Her voice was raw, scraped hollow by exhaustion and cold. "I can smell her on the smoke from your chimney." Silas lowered his rifle slowly. "She's inside, alive." Something flickered across the woman's face. Relief so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. "I need to see her." "Then come in." Silas stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "She's been asking for you." The woman took one step forward, then another. On the third step, her legs gave out. Silas caught her before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her, and he felt how hard her body was muscle built from years of survival, but also how badly she was trembling. "I got you," he said. "Easy now. I got you." She looked up at him, her dark eyes swimming with pain and suspicion, and something else he couldn't name. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you save her?" Silas didn't hesitate. "Because she needed saving." The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp in his arms. He carried her inside. Wren was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide as saucers. The moment she saw the woman, she let out a cry, not of words, but of pure raw emotion. "Shijie!" She scrambled off the bed and threw herself at her mother, wrapping her small arms around the unconscious woman's neck. "Shijie, Shijie, Shijie!" Silas laid the woman on his bed, the only bed big enough for her frame, and gently pried Wren's arms away. "She's alive," he told the child. "But she's hurt bad. I need to tend to her wounds. You understand?" Wren nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Can you hold her hand? Let her know you're here." Wren grabbed her mother's hand with both of hers and pressed it to her cheek. "I'm here, Ma. I'm here." Silas got to work. The wounds were worse than he'd thought. Deep cuts across her back, whip marks definitely. Bruises around her wrists where she'd been bound. a gash on her side that had bled heavily but seemed to have clotted. He cleaned each wound with warm water and wrapped them in strips of clean cloth, working as gently as his rough hands would allow. The woman stirred once, moaning in pain. "Sorry," Silas muttered. "I know it hurts. Almost done." Her eyes opened just a crack and found his face. "You are not hurting me." Her voice was barely audible. "You are helping." "That's the idea." Her eyes closed again, and she drifted back into unconsciousness. When Silas finished, he sat back and wiped his bloody hands on a rag. Wren was still clutching her mother's hand, her small face pressed against the woman's arm. "She's gonna make it," Silas said. "She's strong." Wren looked up at him with those dark, trusting eyes. "I know. She's the strongest person in the whole world." Silas almost smiled. Almost. The woman woke at sunset. Silas was sitting by the stove feeding wood to the fire when he heard her stir. He turned to find her sitting up in bed, her eyes sharp and alert, despite everything her body had been through. Wren was asleep beside her, curled up like a kitten. "Don't move too much," Silas said. "You'll tear the stitches." The woman ignored him. Her hand moved to Wren's hair, stroking it gently, and for a moment her hard face softened into something almost tender. "She called for you," Silas said. "The whole time she was sick with fever. Shema, over and over again. I didn't know what it meant until you showed up." "It means mother." The woman's voice was stronger now, though still rough. "In my language." "Apache." She nodded slowly. "You got a name?" She hesitated. Her jaw tightened, and Silas could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Trust versus survival. Honesty versus self-preservation. "Kaya," she said finally. "But the missionaries called me Grace." "Which one do you prefer?" Another hesitation. "No white man has ever asked me that before." Silas shrugged. "I ain't most white men." Something flickered in Kaya's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. "Kaya. My mother gave me that name. It's the only thing of hers I have left." "Then Kaya it is." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze so intense it felt like she was looking straight through his skin and into his bones. "You saved my daughter," she said, "fed her, kept her warm, and then you saved me. Why?" Silas looked into the fire. "You keep asking me that like there's supposed to be some complicated answer. There ain't. You needed help. I had help to give. That's all." "That's not how the world works." "Maybe not." He met her eyes. "But it's how I work." Kaya was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. 3 days ago, my tribe was attacked. Buffalo hunters. They killed everyone, the elders, the children, anyone who couldn't fight back. Her hand tightened on Wren's hair. They wanted my daughter. Her father was the chief's son. They wanted his bloodline ended. Silas felt his stomach turn. What happened to him? Her father, dead. The word came out flat, final. He died protecting us. Gave me time to hide Wren in the brush and lead them away. And you? Kaya's jaw clenched. They caught me. Tied me up. Cut me. Burned me. Her voice didn't waver, but Silas could see the memories flickering behind her eyes like flames. They wanted me to tell them where Wren was. I didn't. How'd you get away? I waited until they were drunk. Then I bit through the rope and ran. She touched the wound on her side. One of them got me with a knife before I made it to the trees, but I kept running. 3 days through the snow, no food, no water, just moving. Silas shook his head slowly. Most men would have died after 1 day of that. I am not most men. A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. And I had something to live for. Her eyes drifted to Wren, still sleeping peacefully beside her. The firelight danced across her scarred face, and for a moment she looked almost fragile, almost human. "What now?" Silas asked. Kaya looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The storm's got us trapped here for at least another week, maybe more. After that," he shrugged, "you got somewhere to go? Family. Another tribe?" Her expression hardened. "No. Everyone is dead." "Then where will you go?" "I don't know." The words came out sharp, defensive. "Somewhere. Anywhere. We've survived this long. We'll survive longer." Silas nodded slowly. He understood pride, understood the fierce need to prove you didn't need anyone's help, didn't need anyone's pity. But he also understood something else. "You can stay," he said. Kaya's head snapped toward him. "What?" "Here. You can stay here." He gestured around the cabin. "It ain't much, but it's warm. It's safe, and there's room for both of you." She stared at him like he'd just spoken in a language she didn't understand. "Why would you offer that? You don't know me. I know you walked 3 days through a blizzard with a knife wound in your side to find your daughter. I know you let yourself get captured and tortured so she could escape." He met her eyes steadily. "That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Kaya's throat moved as she swallowed hard. "People in town. They won't accept us. An Apache woman and her child living with a white man. They'll talk. They'll do worse than talk. Let them. You could lose everything. Your ranch, your reputation, your life." Silas thought about that for a moment. Thought about the empty cabin, the silent nights, the grave markers behind the barn that he visited every Sunday morning. "I already lost everything once," he said quietly. 4 years ago I buried my wife and my son in the field out back. Fever took them both in the same week." His voice didn't break, but it came close. "Since then, I've been living like a ghost, going through the motions, waiting to die." He looked at Wren still sleeping with her hand wrapped around her mother's fingers. "Then I found her in the snow, and something woke up inside me, something I thought was dead forever." He turned back to Kaya. "I ain't asking you to trust me. I ain't asking for anything. I'm just saying you don't have to leave. You don't have to face this alone." Kaya's eyes glistened in the firelight. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Wren stirred beside her. "Ma." Kaya looked down at her daughter, her hard expression melting into something soft and fierce and protective. "I'm here, little one. I'm right here." Wren's eyes found Silas. "Is the nice man going to let us stay?" Kaya hesitated. Silas waited. Finally she looked at him, really looked past the surface, past her own fear and pride and pain. "For now," she said quietly. "We'll stay for now." Silas nodded. For now. But they both knew somehow in that moment, they both knew that, for now, was already starting to mean something more. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin, for the first time in 4 years, Silas Brennan didn't feel alone. That night, after Wren had fallen back asleep, Kaya sat up against the wall, watching Silas tend the fire. "You're different," she said. Silas glanced over his shoulder. "Different how?" "Most white men look at me like I'm an animal, something to be used or destroyed." Her voice was matter-of-fact, not bitter, just honest. "You look at me like I'm a person." "That's because you are one." Simple as that. Simple as that. Kaya shook her head slowly. "I spent 3 years at a missionary school when I was young. They taught me to read, to write, to speak English. They also taught me that my people were savages, that we were less than human." She laughed softly, a hard, humorless sound. "I learned their words, but I never believed their lies." "Good," Silas said. "You shouldn't have." She studied him in the flickering light. "Why are you alone out here, Silas Brennan? A man like you should have a family, a wife." Silas was quiet for a long moment. I told you, I did have a family. And now I got a ranch and a lot of empty rooms. He poked at the fire with an iron rod. Most days that feels like enough. Most days. And the other days? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Kaya nodded slowly, understanding passing between them like a current of shared grief. We are both broken, she said softly. Both carrying graves inside us. Yeah. Silas set down the iron rod and turned to face her fully. I reckon we are. Their eyes met across the cabin. Neither looked away. Get some rest, Silas said finally. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next. Kaya lay back down beside her daughter, pulling Ren close to her chest. But her eyes stayed open, watching Silas through the darkness. And Silas, settling into his chair by the fire, found himself watching her too. The storm howled outside, shaking the cabin walls, but neither of them heard it. Something had shifted tonight. Something neither of them had words for yet, but it was there, growing in the silence between them, waiting. The days blurred together after that. Silas woke before dawn each morning, stoking the fire, heating water, checking on the two strangers who had turned his quiet cabin into something else entirely. Kaya's wounds were healing faster than he'd expected. By the fourth day, she was sitting up on her own. By the fifth, she was insisting on helping with chores. You need to rest, Silas told her, blocking the doorway with his arm. Kaya ducked under it and walked past him. I've rested enough. My body knows when it's ready. Your body's got a hole in its side. Had. She grabbed the bucket by the door. Now it's just a scar. Silas watched her walk toward the well, her stride strong despite everything. He shook his head and muttered under his breath, "Stubborn woman." I heard that, she called back without turning around. Ren appeared at Silas's elbow, tugging his sleeve. She's always like that. Ma never sits still. I'm starting to figure that out. The child looked up at him with those dark, serious eyes. Are you mad at her? Silas crouched down to her level. No, little bird. I ain't mad. Just worried. Why? Because when people push too hard too fast, they break. Ren considered this for a moment. Ma doesn't break. She bends, like the willow trees by the river. Silas felt something crack open in his chest. That's real wise for someone your age. My father used to say it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Before the bad men came. Silas put his hand on her shoulder. You miss him. Ren nodded, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. Every day. But Ma says he's watching us from the sky. She says he sent you to help us. Silas didn't know what to say to that. So he just squeezed her shoulder gently and stood up. Come on, he said. Let's go make sure your mother doesn't hurt herself trying to prove she's invincible. Ren almost smiled. Almost. They found Kaya at the well, hauling up a bucket of water with one arm. Silas grabbed the rope and pulled it the rest of the way. I had it, Kaya said. I know you did. Their hands brushed as he took the bucket. Neither of them pulled away. You're a difficult man, Silas Brennan. Funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you. Kaya's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Where I come from, we call that a compliment. Where I come from, too. They stood there for a moment, the cold wind whipping around them, neither willing to be the first to look away. Ren tugged on her mother's hand. I'm hungry. The spell broke. Kaya looked down at her daughter and nodded. Then let's eat. They walked back to the cabin together, the three of them moving in a rhythm that was starting to feel almost natural, almost like a family. Silas pushed that thought away as soon as it came. It was too soon for thoughts like that, too dangerous, but it lingered anyway, warming him from the inside like a second fire. That afternoon, while Ren napped, Silas found Kaya sitting by the window, staring out at the endless white. Storm's letting up, he said. Should be able to dig out the door by tomorrow. Kaya nodded, but didn't turn around. That's good. Is it? Now she turned. What do you mean? Silas sat down across from her. I mean, once the storm clears, you're gonna have to make a choice. Stay here or move on. I told you, we'll stay for now. For now. He leaned forward. And then what? When now runs out, what happens? Kaya's jaw tightened. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Silas held her gaze. You're scared. I'm not. Yes, you are, and that's fine. You got every right to be scared. But running ain't gonna make the fear go away. Trust me. I've been running for 4 years, and it's still right here. He tapped his chest. Still sitting in my heart like a stone. Kaya's eyes glistened. What do you want from me, Silas? Nothing you ain't willing to give. Then why do you keep pushing? Because I see something in you, something I ain't seen in a long time. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I see someone worth fighting for. Kaya's breath caught. She looked away quickly, but not before Silas saw the tears threatening to spill. You don't know me, she whispered. No, but I'd like to. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Kaya spoke. When I was 15, the missionaries took me from my family. They said they were going to civilize me, teach me to be a proper woman. She laughed bitterly. They cut my hair, burned my clothes, beat me when I spoke my own language. Silas's hands curled into fists. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me strong. She turned back to face him. I survived 3 years in that place, learned their ways, their words, and then I ran. Went back to my people and swore I'd never let anyone control me again. And now I'm sitting in a white man's cabin, wounded and helpless, depending on his charity. Her voice cracked. Do you know how that feels? Silas nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. Kaya looked at him sharply. How could you possibly? After Clara and my boy died, I couldn't do nothing for myself. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even get out of bed most days. He rubbed his jaw. My neighbor, an old Crow Indian named Two Feathers, he saved my life. Came by every day for 3 months. Brought me food, made me chop wood, told me stories about his people. Never asked for nothing in return. Kaya was staring at him now with new eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because accepting help ain't weakness, it's survival. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. You saved your daughter's life by letting me help her. You saved your own life by letting me tend your wounds. That ain't helplessness, Kaya. That's strength. Her fingers trembled in his grip. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Trust someone. She looked at their joined hands. Trust you. You don't have to figure it out all at once. Just take it one day at a time. Kaya was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she tightened her grip on his hand. One day at a time, she repeated. That's all any of us got. They sat there in silence, hands intertwined as the afternoon light faded into evening. When Wren woke up and found them like that, she didn't say anything. She just climbed into her mother's lap and leaned her head against Silas's arm. 3 broken people holding on to each other in the fading light. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next morning, Silas dug out the door and made a path to the barn. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world blanketed in pristine white. The air was sharp and cold, but the sun was shining for the first time in over a week. I need to check on the horses, he told Kaya. Make sure they survive the storm. I'll come with you. You should rest. Kaya gave him a look that said exactly what she thought of that suggestion. Silas sighed. Fine. But if you start bleeding again, I'm carrying you back whether you like it or not. You could try. Despite himself, Silas almost smiled. They walked to the barn together, their boots crunching through the fresh snow. Kaya moved carefully, one hand pressed against her wounded side, but she kept pace with him, without complaint. Inside the barn, the horses nickered with relief at the sight of him. Silas checked them over quickly. All three were fine, if a little hungry. "They're beautiful," Kaya said, running her hand along the neck of his bay mare. "Strong." "That one's Clara." The name slipped out before he could stop it. "My wife's favorite. She named her." Kaya's hand stilled. "You kept the name." "Couldn't bring myself to change it." He busied himself with the feed bucket. "Stupid, I know." "No." Kaya's voice was soft. "It's not stupid. It's love." Silas paused his back to her. "She would have liked you." "Your wife?" "Yeah." He turned around. "She had a way of seeing the good in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves." Kaya met his eyes. "And what do you see when you look at me, Silas Brennan?" The question hung in the air between them. "I see a woman who's been through hell and came out the other side still standing. I see a mother who'd die for her child without a second thought. I see someone who's been hurt so many times, she forgot what it feels like to be safe." He took a step closer. "And I see someone who deserves better than what life's given her." Kaya's breath caught. "You see all that. I see more, but I figure that's enough for now." She laughed softly, a real laugh, warm and surprised. "You are a strange man." "So I've been told." They stood close now, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her dark eyes, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath in the cold barn air. "Silas?" "Yeah." Whatever she was going to say was cut off by a sound from outside. Hooves. Multiple horses approaching fast. Silas's hand went to his hip where his pistol should have been. It wasn't there, he'd left it in the cabin. "Stay here," he said. "Like hell." "Kaya." "I'm not hiding while you face danger alone. Not again." There was no time to argue. Silas grabbed a pitchfork from the wall and moved toward the barn door. Kaya picked up a heavy iron horseshoe, gripping it like a weapon. They stepped outside together. 3 men on horseback had stopped at the edge of Silas's property. Their clothes were rough, their faces hard. The one in front, a lean man with a scar running down his cheek, was staring at Kaya with an expression that made Silas's blood run cold. "Well, well," the scarred man said. "Look what we found, boys." One of the others laughed. "That's her all right. Cole's gonna pay good money for this." Kaya went rigid beside Silas. Her hand tightened on the horseshoe until her knuckles turned white. "You know these men?" Silas asked quietly. "They're buffalo hunters." Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're the ones who attacked my tribe." Silas stepped forward, putting himself between Kaya and the riders. "This is private property. You boys best move along." The scarred man grinned, revealing a mouthful of rotting teeth. "We ain't here for you, rancher. We're here for the squaw. Hand her over, and there won't be any trouble." "There's already trouble. You're looking at it." The man's grin faded. "Don't be stupid, friend. There's 3 of us and 1 of you. Even if you got a gun hidden somewhere, you ain't fast enough to take all 3. "Maybe not." Silas shifted his grip on the pitchfork. "But I'm fast enough to take you. And your friends there don't look like the type to stick around once the lead man goes down." The 2 men behind exchanged nervous glances. The scarred man studied Silas for a long moment. Then he laughed a cold, ugly sound. "You got stones, I'll give you that. But this ain't over. Cole Harker's been looking for that woman for a week now. He ain't the type to give up." He spat in the snow. "We'll be back. And next time we'll bring more men." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his companions following close behind. Silas didn't lower the pitchfork until they were out of sight. "They'll be back," Kaya said. Her voice was steady, but Silas could see her hands shaking. Cole Harker doesn't stop. He never stops. Then we'll be ready. You don't understand. She grabbed his arm. He's the one who killed my husband. He's the one who ordered the attack on my tribe. He's a monster, Silas. And now he knows where I am. Silas turned to face her fully. Listen to me. I don't care who he is or how many men he's got. He ain't touching you or Wren, not while I'm breathing. You could die. I could. But that ain't gonna stop me from trying. Kaya stared at him, her dark eyes filled with something he couldn't quite read. Fear, gratitude. Something else entirely. Why, she asked. Why would you risk your life for us? Silas thought about that question, really thought about it. Because 4 years ago I gave up. I let the grief swallow me whole. I stopped caring whether I lived or died. He reached up and touched her face gently, like she was something precious. You and Wren. You woke something up in me, something I thought was gone forever. And I ain't about to let that go without a fight. Kaya's eyes filled with tears. Silas? Come on. He dropped his hand and stepped back. We need to get inside, make a plan. They walked back to the cabin in silence, the weight of what was coming pressing down on both of them. Inside, Wren looked up from where she'd been playing with a wooden spoon. Her face went pale when she saw their expressions. Ma, what's wrong? Kaya knelt beside her daughter and pulled her close. Nothing, little one. Everything's going to be fine. Wren looked at Silas over her mother's shoulder. Her eyes were too old, too knowing for a child her age. They found us, didn't they? Kaya's arms tightened around her. Yes. Wren nodded slowly. She didn't cry, didn't panic, just reached up and put her small hand on her mother's cheek. It's okay, Ma. The nice man will protect us. I know he will. Silas felt that crack in his chest widen a little more. That's right, little bird, he said. I will. He walked to the corner of the cabin and pulled out the trunk he kept hidden under a loose floorboard. Inside were his pistol, a rifle, 2 boxes of ammunition, and a hunting knife with a bone handle. Kaya watched him check the weapons with practiced efficiency. You've done this before. I was a scout for the army, long time ago. He loaded the rifle. Before I met Clara, before I decided killing wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. And now... Silas looked at her, his eyes hard. Now I'll do whatever it takes to keep you both safe. That night, after Wren was asleep, Silas sat by the window with his rifle across his lap. Kaya sat beside him close enough that their shoulders touched. You should get some rest, he said. So should you. Someone's got to keep watch. Then we'll keep watch together. Silas glanced at her. You always this stubborn? Always. She shifted closer. My husband used to say it was my best quality, and my worst. Smart man. He was. Her voice softened. His name was Running Wolf. He was gentle and strong and kind. He would have liked you. Silas didn't know what to say to that. So he just sat there shoulder to shoulder with this woman who had come into his life like a storm and turned everything upside down. Silas. Yeah. If something happens tomorrow, if they come and I don't make it. She took a deep breath. Promise me you'll take care of Wren. Silas turned to look at her. Nothing's gonna happen to you. Promise me. He held her gaze for a long moment. I promise. Kaya nodded slowly. Then without warning, she leaned in and pressed her lips to his cheek. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Before he could respond, she stood up and walked to where Wren was sleeping. She lay down beside her daughter and closed her eyes. Silas sat there alone, his cheek burning where her lips had touched his heart pounding with something that felt dangerously close to hope. He stayed awake until dawn watching the horizon for shadows that never came. But he knew they were out there, waiting. And when they finally came, he would be ready. The morning broke cold and gray. Silas had been awake for nearly 30 hours, but his mind was sharp, his body coiled like a spring. Kaya stirred beside Ren, then sat up suddenly, her eyes scanning the room until they found Silas. "Anything?" she asked. "Not yet." She stood and walked to where he sat. "You didn't sleep." "Couldn't." Kaya put her hand on his shoulder. "You can't protect us if you're exhausted. I'll rest when this is over." "Silas, don't." He covered her hand with his own. "Don't ask me to close my eyes when I know what's coming. I can't do that." She was quiet for a moment. Then she squeezed his shoulder and nodded. "I'll make coffee." "That would be good." She moved to the stove and Silas watched her go. Watched the way she moved careful and deliberate. Watched the way her hands worked steady despite everything. He'd known this woman for less than a week. But somehow it felt like he'd been waiting for her his whole life. Ren woke up while the coffee was brewing. She padded over to Silas on bare feet and climbed into his lap without asking permission. "Good morning, little bird." "Morning." She snuggled against his chest. "I had a bad dream." "What about?" "The bad men. They were chasing us again." Her small fingers clutched his shirt. "But then you came. You had a big horse and a shiny gun, and you chased them all away." Silas wrapped his arms around her. "That's what I'm gonna do. I promise." Ren looked up at him with those dark, trusting eyes. "I know. That's why it was a good dream at the end." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of her hair, wood smoke and sage, and something uniquely her. This child, this fierce, brave, broken child. He would die before he let anyone hurt her. Kaya brought him a cup of coffee, and their eyes met over Ren's head. A whole conversation passed between them without a single word. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The waiting was the hardest part. By midday, Silas's nerves were stretched thin. He'd walked the perimeter of the property twice, checked his weapons 3 times, and gone over escape routes with Kaya until she could recite them in her sleep. "If they come from the north, you take Ren through the back window and run for the tree line. If they come from the south, you go out the front and head for the ravine. If they surround us." "Silas." Kaya put her hand on his arm. "I know. You've told me. I need you to remember." "I remember." She stepped closer. "But you need to breathe. You're wound tighter than a bowstring." "Someone's gotta be." "Not like this." She reached up and touched his face, her calloused fingers gentle against his jaw. "You'll break if you don't ease up." Silas closed his eyes. "I can't lose you." The words came out before he could stop them. He felt Kaya go still. "What?" He opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked. "I can't lose you. Either of you. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I can't—" His voice broke. "I can't bury anyone else, Kaya. I won't survive it." Her eyes glistened with tears. "Silas." "I ain't asking for anything. I just needed you to know." Kaya didn't say anything. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close. Silas stood frozen for a moment. Then his arms came up encircling her, holding her tight against his chest. They stood there for a long time, neither of them speaking. When they finally pulled apart, something had shifted between them. Something fundamental and irreversible. "Together," Kaya said softly. Silas nodded. "Together." Ren's voice came from across the room, high and frightened. "Ma, Silas, someone's coming." They sprang apart. Silas grabbed his rifle and moved to the window, his heart hammering in his chest. 3 riders on the road. No 4. No 7. 7 men on horseback riding hard toward the cabin. And at the front, leading them like a general leading his army into battle, was a man Silas had never seen before. But he knew who it was. Cole Harker had come for what he wanted, and he'd brought an army to take it. Silas turned to Kaya. Her face was pale, but set her jaw tight with determination. "Take Ren," he said. "Go out the back. Now." "I won't leave you." "This ain't a discussion." "You're right. It isn't." She grabbed the pistol from the table. "I'm staying. We fight together or we die together." "Kaya." I said no. Her voice cracked like a whip. "I've run enough. I've lost enough. I won't lose you too." They stood face to face, neither backing down. Then Silas nodded slowly. "All right. Together." Kaya moved to the other window. Ren crouched in the corner, her eyes wide with terror, but her mouth set in a thin, brave line. The riders stopped at the edge of the property. Cole Harker dismounted and walked forward, his boots crunching in the snow. He was tall and broad, with a beard the color of rust and eyes like chips of ice. "Silas Brennan." His voice carried across the distance. "We don't want trouble with you. Just hand over the woman and the girl, and we'll be on our way." Silas stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. "The only thing I'm handing over is a bullet. Your choice where it lands." Harker laughed. "You got sand, I'll give you that. But look around. 7 guns against 1. You ain't winning this." "Maybe not, but you ain't either." "We'll see about that." Harker's smile faded. "Last chance, rancher. Walk away." Silas cocked his rifle. "Make me." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Harker nodded to his men. "Kill him." Gunfire exploded across the valley, and Silas Brennan pulled the trigger. Silas's first shot caught the nearest rider square in the chest. The man tumbled backward off his horse, dead before he hit the ground. "Get down!" Silas shouted, ducking behind the porch railing as bullets tore through the air around him. From inside the cabin, Kaya's pistol barked twice. Another man screamed and grabbed his shoulder, nearly falling from his saddle. "Ma!" Ren's voice was high with terror. "Stay down, little one. Don't move." Silas fired again, missed, fired a third time. A horse reared and threw its rider into the snow. 5 men left. No 4. Kaya had dropped another one. Cole Harker was shouting orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Flank them. Get around the back." Silas's blood ran cold. Kaya too, going around. "I see them." She was already moving, abandoning her position at the window and racing toward the back of the cabin. Silas heard her fire twice more, heard a man curse in pain. 3 left. Harker and 2 others. But they'd stopped charging. They'd taken cover behind the barn, and now they were picking their shots, patient and deadly. Silas reloaded with shaking hands. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. A bullet splintered the wood inches from his head. "Brennan!" Harker's voice rang out across the yard. "You're a damn fool. All this for some Apache whore and her brat?" Silas didn't answer. He was counting bullets, counting enemies, calculating odds that got worse by the second. "I'll make you a deal," Harker continued. "Throw out the woman and the kid, and I'll let you live. You got my word." "Your word ain't worth spit, Harker." Laughter, cold and cruel. "Maybe not, but it's the only offer you're gonna get." Kaya appeared at Silas's side, breathing hard. There was blood on her sleeve, but she shook her head when she saw his eyes go to it. "Not mine. One of theirs." "The 2 in back?" "Dead." Silas let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "That leaves 3. 2. I think I hit another one." "You think?" "I was shooting through a wall. Hard to be sure." Despite everything, Silas almost laughed. "You're something else, you know that." "So I've been told." A bullet shattered what was left of the window, showering them both with glass. Ren screamed from her hiding spot in the corner. "We can't stay here," Kaya said. "They'll wait us out. Pick us off one by one." "Then we don't let them wait." "What are you thinking?" Silas met her eyes. "I'm thinking someone needs to draw their fire, while someone else circles around behind them." "No." Kaya grabbed his arm. "That's suicide." "Maybe. But it's also the only chance we got." "Then I'll do it. I'll draw their fire." "Like hell you will." "Silas." Wren needs her mother. If one of us has to die today, it ain't gonna be you." Kaya's eyes filled with tears. "Don't ask me to watch you die. I ain't planning on dying." He touched her face gentle and quick. "But if I do, take care of that little girl, and take care of yourself. Silas, please. Promise me." Her voice broke. "I promise." He kissed her forehead hard and fast, then grabbed his rifle and moved toward the door. "Silas." He looked back. Kaya was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Come back to me." "I will." He didn't know if it was a promise or a prayer. Maybe both. Then he kicked open the door and ran into the gunfire. The world exploded into noise and chaos. Bullets whizzed past him, kicking up snow-splintering wood. Silas ran in a zigzag pattern, making himself as hard a target as possible. "There he is!" One of Harker's men shouted. "Get him!" Silas dove behind the water trough, gasping for breath. A bullet punched through the wood, missing him by inches. He rolled to the side and came up firing. One shot, two, three. A man stumbled out from behind the barn, clutching his gut. He took 2 steps and collapsed face first in the snow. 2 left, just Harker and one more. "Impressive," Harker called out. "I underestimated you, Brennan. Won't make that mistake again." Silas didn't waste breath answering. He was watching, waiting, trying to spot the second man. There. A flash of movement near the barn door. Silas aimed. Fired. The shot went wide, but it drove the man back into cover. That was all Silas needed. He sprinted toward the barn, ignoring the pain in his lungs, ignoring the fear screaming in his head. Harker fired at him, missed. The other man leaned out to take aim. He never got the shot off. Kaya's pistol cracked from the cabin window, and the man's head snapped back. He crumpled without a sound. One left. Cole Harker. Silas reached the barn and pressed himself against the wall, breathing hard. His rifle was empty. He had his knife, and that was it. "Just you and me now, Harker?" Silence. Then footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming around the other side of the barn. Silas gripped his knife and waited. Harker appeared at the corner, his pistol raised. He was bleeding from a wound in his arm, but his eyes were clear and cold. "You killed 6 of my men," he said. 7 counting the 2 your buddies found in the woods. "They weren't my men. They were bounty hunters, expendable." "And what are you?" Harker smiled. It was the smile of a man who had long ago stopped caring about right and wrong. "I'm the man who's gonna kill you, take that woman back, and sell her daughter to the highest bidder." Silas's vision went red. "Over my dead body." "That's the idea." Harker fired. The bullet caught Silas in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the barn wall hard, his knife falling from numb fingers. Pain exploded through him, white-hot and blinding. He slid down the wall, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. Harker walked toward him, calm and unhurried. "I respect you, Brennan. I really do. Not many men would have put up that kind of fight." He stopped 3 feet away, aiming his pistol at Silas's head. "But this is how it ends. Any last words?" Silas looked up at him, his vision swimming. He thought about Clara, about his son, about Kaya and Wren, and the life he'd almost let himself believe he could have. "Yeah," he said. "Duck." Harker's eyes widened. The horseshoe caught him in the side of the head with a sickening crack. He staggered sideways, his pistol discharging harmlessly into the air. Kaya was there, her face twisted with fury, swinging the horseshoe again. It connected with Harker's jaw, and Silas heard bone break. Harker went down hard, but he wasn't done. Even with blood streaming down his face, even with his jaw hanging at an unnatural angle, he scrambled for his gun. Silas moved without thinking. He grabbed his knife from the snow and drove it into Harker's chest. The man's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "That's for her husband," Silas said, "and for every other soul you've destroyed." Harker's eyes glazed over. His body went limp. Cole Harker was dead. Silas collapsed back against the barn wall, the knife still clutched in his bloody hand. The world was spinning. Everything hurt. Silas? Kaya was at his side, her hands pressing against his wound. Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me. I'm not going anywhere. His voice was weak, but he managed a small smile. Told you I'd come back. Tears streamed down her face. You stupid, stubborn man. Takes one to know one. She laughed through her tears, a broken, beautiful sound. Don't talk. Save your strength. Can't stop talking. You know that. Silas. I need to tell you something. It can wait. No, it can't. He reached up with his good hand and touched her face. I love you, Kaya. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I love you. And Ren. And I want... He coughed, pain shooting through his chest. I want to spend whatever time I got left being your family. Kaya's breath caught in a sob. You're not dying. I won't let you. Then you better get me inside before I bleed out in the snow. She wiped her tears and nodded. Can you walk? With help. She pulled his good arm over her shoulders and hauled him to his feet. Together they stumbled toward the cabin, leaving a trail of blood in the snow behind them. Ren met them at the door, her face pale with fear. Is he going to be okay, Ma? He's going to be fine, Kaya said. But I need your help. Can you be brave for me? Ren nodded solemnly. I can be brave. They got Silas onto the bed and Kaya went to work. She'd been trained as a healer in her tribe, and her hands moved with practiced efficiency, even as tears continued to stream down her face. The bullet went through, she said. That's good. Less damage. Feels like more damage, Silas muttered. Hush, let me work. Ren stood by the bed holding Silas's hand. You saved us, she said quietly. We saved each other, little bird. Does it hurt a lot? Yeah, but I've had worse. Kaya glanced at him sharply. Liar. Maybe a little. She threaded a needle with steady hands. This is going to hurt more. Can't wait. She stitched his wound while Ren held his hand and talked to him about her dreams about the birds she wanted to see. When spring came, about how she was going to learn to ride a horse and become the fastest rider in all the territories. Silas held on to her voice like a lifeline, letting it pull him through the pain. When Kaya finally tied off the last stitch, she sat back and let out a long breath. Done. Am I gonna live? If you rest and don't do anything stupid for the next few weeks. Define stupid. Anything other than lying in this bed and letting me take care of you. Silas managed a weak grin. I could get used to that. Kaya shook her head, but there was a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Impossible, man. You love it. Her smile faded into something softer, more serious. I do. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. I love you, Silas Brennan. God help me, I do. Is that a yes? A yes to what? To being a family. You, me, and Ren. For real. Kaya pulled back and looked at him, her dark eyes shining with tears and something else. Something that looked like hope. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Ren threw her arms around both of them, nearly knocking Kaya off the bed. We're going to be a family. We already are, little bird, Silas said. We already are. The next few days were a blur of pain and healing. Silas drifted in and out of consciousness, waking to find Kaya beside him, always beside him. Her hand wrapped around his like she was afraid he'd slip away if she let go. You need to sleep, he told her on the third morning. I'll sleep when you're better. Kaya, don't argue with me. You'll lose. He closed his eyes and smiled. Stubborn woman. You're stubborn woman. Yeah. His voice was soft, filled with wonder. Mine. On the fourth day, Silas woke to find Ren curled up beside him on the bed, her small body warm against his side. Kaya was at the stove stirring something that smelled like heaven. "She wouldn't leave your side," Kaya said without turning around. "I tried to move her, but she's as stubborn as you are." "Wonder where she gets that from." Kaya glanced over her shoulder with a wry smile. "Certainly not from me." Silas laughed, then winced as pain shot through his shoulder. "Don't make me laugh. It hurts." "Then stop being funny." "Can't help it. It's a gift." Wren stirred, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw Silas awake, her face lit up like the sun. "You're alive." "Still here, little bird." She sat up and threw her arms around his neck, careful to avoid his wounded shoulder. "I was so scared. I thought you were going to die like my father." Silas wrapped his good arm around her and held her close. "I ain't going anywhere. I promise." "Cross your heart." "Cross my heart." She pulled back and looked at him with those dark, serious eyes. "Can I really call you father now?" Silas's throat tightened. He looked at Kaya, who had turned from the stove and was watching them with tears in her eyes. "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, you can." Wren's smile was brighter than any sunrise he'd ever seen. "Father, I like the way that sounds." "Me too, little bird. Me too." By the end of the first week, Silas was well enough to sit up on his own. By the end of the second, he could walk short distances with Kaya's help. His shoulder still ached something fierce, but the wound was healing clean, and Kaya assured him there was no sign of infection. "You're lucky," she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. Wren was asleep and the cabin was quiet, except for the crackle of burning wood. Another inch to the left and the bullet would have hit your heart. "I've always been lucky." Kaya raised an eyebrow. "You call this lucky?" "I'm alive. You're here. Wren's safe." He reached over and took her hand. "Yeah, I call that pretty damn lucky." She squeezed his fingers. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean—" She hesitated, searching for words. "The men are dead. Harker's dead. But there could be others. People who want revenge. People who won't accept—" She gestured between them. "This." "You mean folks who won't accept a white man and an Apache woman living together?" "Yes." Silas was quiet for a moment. He'd been thinking about this too, the complications, the dangers, the hatred they'd face from both sides. "There's a town about 2 days' ride from here," he said finally. "Elk Creek. It ain't much, but the people there are decent. Some of them anyway. There's a trading post run by a half-Cheyenne fellow named Elijah Crow. He's a friend. He could help us get supplies, make connections with other tribes. And the other people, the ones who aren't decent, we'll deal with them as they come." Kaya shook her head. "That's not a plan." "No, it's a promise." He turned to face her fully. "I ain't gonna pretend things are gonna be easy. They won't. There'll be people who hate us, people who try to tear us apart. But I don't care. I don't care what anyone thinks or says. You're my family now. You and Wren. And I'll fight for this family until my last breath." Kaya's eyes glistened in the firelight. "You mean that?" "Every word." She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When she pulled back, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Then we fight together," she said. "Always." Always. The word hung in the air between them, a vow more binding than any wedding ceremony. That night they fell asleep in each other's arms. Wren curled between them like a small warm anchor. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying away the last echoes of violence and fear. Inside, there was only peace. 2 weeks after the gunfight, Silas rode into Elk Creek for the first time since Kaya and Wren had come into his life. His shoulder was still stiff, but he could handle a horse well enough, and there were things they needed: supplies, medicine, news about whether anyone had come looking for Harker and his men. The town was small, a single main street, lined with wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith. People stopped and stared as Silas rode past. Word traveled fast in these parts, and he had no doubt they'd heard about what had happened at his ranch. He tied his horse outside the trading post and walked in. Elijah Crow was behind the counter sorting through a pile of furs. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, and weathered by years of hard living, with long black hair, streaked with gray, and sharp dark eyes that missed nothing. "Silas Brennan," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Heard you had some excitement out at your place." "News travels fast. This is the frontier. News is about all we got." Elijah came around the counter and clasped Silas's hand. "Cole Harker. 7 men, all dead. That's impressive even for you." "I had help." "Ah." Elijah's smile widened. "The Apache woman. I heard about her too. Her name is Kaya." "Kaya." Elijah nodded. "Beautiful name, strong name." He studied Silas's face for a long moment. "You care about her." It wasn't a question, but Silas answered anyway. "More than I ever thought I could care about anyone again." Elijah clapped him on the shoulder, the uninjured one. "Then you're a lucky man. Don't let anyone tell you different." "I won't." They talked for an hour, catching up on news and gossip. Elijah told him that no one had come looking for Harker. The man had apparently made enough enemies that his death was met with more relief than outrage. There might be trouble down the line, but for now, things were quiet. "What about the town?" Silas asked. "How are folks going to take it when they find out I'm living with an Apache woman and her daughter?" Elijah's expression grew serious. "Some won't like it. Martha Holloway at the general store, she's got opinions about everything and everyone. A few others too. But most folks around here mind their own business. Long as you don't cause trouble, they'll leave you alone. And if trouble comes to us, then you got friends who'll stand with you." Elijah met his eyes. "You ain't alone in this, Silas. Remember that." Silas nodded slowly. "I appreciate it." "Don't appreciate it. Just buy something so I can keep this place running." Silas left the trading post with a sack of flour, some salt pork, a bolt of cloth Kaya could use to make new clothes for Wren, and something else, something small and carefully wrapped in soft leather. He didn't show it to Elijah. Some things were meant to be private. When Silas got home, Wren came running out to meet him before he'd even dismounted. "Father, you're back." The word still sent a warm shock through his chest every time he heard it. He swung down from the saddle and caught her up in his arms. "I'm back, little bird. Miss me?" "Every minute." She hugged him tight, then pulled back to look at his face. "Did you bring presents?" "Maybe 1 or 2. Her eyes lit up. "What kind?" "You'll see. Help me carry these inside." Kaya met them at the door, her eyes scanning Silas from head to toe, checking for new injuries. When she was satisfied he was in one piece, she relaxed and smiled. "How was town?" "Quiet. Elijah sends his regards. You should bring him here sometime. I'd like to meet him." "I will." He set down the supplies and turned to face her. "But first, there's something I need to do." Kaya's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Silas reached into his pocket and pulled out the small leather bundle. His hands were shaking slightly as he unwrapped it. Inside was a ring. It wasn't fancy, just a simple band of silver polished until it gleamed in the firelight. Silas had traded his father's pocket watch for it, the only thing of value he'd had left from his old life. "I know we said we didn't need ceremonies," he said quietly. "No vows, no preacher, no rings. And if you don't want this, that's fine. But I wanted you to have something. Something that says you're mine and I'm yours. For as long as we both draw breath." Kaya stared at the ring, her eyes wide and shining. Her hands came up to cover her mouth. "Silas, you don't have to wear it if you don't want to. I just..." She kissed him before he could finish, hard and fierce and full of everything she couldn't put into words. When she finally pulled back, tears were streaming down her face. "Put it on me." His hands were steadier now as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Kaya held up her hand, watching the way the firelight caught the silver. "It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as you." She laughed through her tears. "Smooth talker." "I try." Ren had been watching the whole thing with wide eyes. "Does this mean you're married now?" Silas looked at Kaya. Kaya looked at Silas. "Yeah," he said softly. "I reckon it does." Ren threw her arms around both of them. "Best day ever." Kaya laughed, wrapping one arm around her daughter and the other around Silas. "Best day ever," she agreed. Silas held them both close, his heart fuller than it had ever been. For the first time in 4 years, he wasn't just surviving, he was living. And it felt like coming home. Spring came slow to the Montana Territory, but when it finally arrived, it came with a vengeance. The snow melted into rushing streams, the grass pushed up through the mud, and the world turned green almost overnight. Silas stood on the porch, watching Ren chase butterflies across the field. His shoulder still ached on cold mornings, but he was stronger now, strong enough to work, strong enough to ride, strong enough to protect his family. His family. The word still felt strange in his mouth, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. But every day it got easier. Every day it felt more real. Kaya came up beside him, her hand sliding into his. "She's happy." "Yeah." Silas squeezed her fingers. "She is." "She asked me this morning if she could learn to rope cattle." "Did she now?" "I told her to ask her father." Silas felt that familiar warmth spread through his chest. "I'll teach her, when she's a little older." Kaya leaned her head against his shoulder. "We need to go to town." "I know." "The supplies won't last another week." "I know." She looked up at him, her dark eyes searching his face. "Are you worried?" Silas considered lying, decided against it. "Yeah, a little. About what people will say. About what people will do." He turned to face her fully. "I can handle words. But if someone tries to hurt you or Ren, they won't." "You don't know that." Kaya's jaw tightened. "Then we'll deal with it together, like we deal with everything." Silas looked at her. This woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side still standing, still fighting, still believing in a future most people would have given up on long ago. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow. We'll go together." Tomorrow came too fast. They set out at dawn, all 3 of them riding on Silas's 2 horses. Ren sat in front of Kaya, chattering endlessly about everything she saw. The birds, the flowers, the clouds shaped like rabbits and bears. Silas rode ahead, his rifle across his saddle, his eyes scanning the horizon. He told himself he was just being cautious. But the truth was, his stomach was tied in knots. Elk Creek appeared on the horizon around mid-morning. As they got closer, Silas felt Kaya tense beside him. "It'll be fine," he said, not sure if he was reassuring her or himself. "I know." They rode into town side by side. The stares started immediately. People stopped in the street, their conversations dying mid-sentence. A woman pulled her child closer. An old man spat in the dirt and turned away. Silas kept his eyes forward, his back straight. Beside him, Kaya did the same. "Father." Ren's voice was small, uncertain. "Why are they looking at us like that?" "Because they ain't seen anyone as pretty as your mother before," Silas said. "They're just surprised." Kaya shot him a grateful look. They tied their horses outside the general store and went inside. The bell above the door jangled, and the woman behind the counter looked up. Martha Holloway was a thin, pinched woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. Her eyes went from Silas to Kaya to Ren, and her lips pressed together in a thin, disapproving line. "Mr. Brennan," she said coolly. I heard you had company out at your ranch. Not company. Family. Martha's eyebrows rose. Family. That's what I said. Silas stepped forward, placing his list on the counter. I need flour salt coffee and whatever fresh vegetables you got. Martha didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on Kaya and Wren, who stood near the door. I don't serve Indians, she said. The words hit like a slap. Silas felt his hands curl into fists. Excuse me. You heard me. Martha's voice was steady righteous. This is a Christian establishment. We don't cater to savages. Watch your mouth. Or what, Mr. Brennan? You'll threaten me like you threatened those men you killed. She shook her head. The whole town knows what happened. 7 men dead. Over what? Some Apache squaw and her? That's enough. The voice came from behind them. Silas turned to find Elijah Crow standing in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space. Elijah? Martha said, her voice sharp. This doesn't concern you. Everything that happens in this town concerns me. Elijah walked forward, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. And what I just heard was a decent woman being insulted by someone who should know better. Decent. She's a mother, a wife, a human being. Elijah stopped beside Silas, his dark eyes boring into Martha. And the last time I checked, the good book says to love thy neighbor. Doesn't say anything about skin color. Martha's face went red. You're one to talk. Half-breed. Elijah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's right, half-breed, half-savage, half-Christian. Maybe that's why I can see both sides so clearly. He leaned on the counter. Now, are you going to serve these good people, or do I need to spread the word that Holloway's General Store discriminates against paying customers? Martha's jaw worked. Her hands trembled with barely suppressed rage. Fine, she spat. But I want them out of my store in 5 minutes. That's the Christian spirit. Silas gathered his supplies in silence, his blood still boiling. Kaya helped him load everything into sacks, her face carefully blank. Only Wren seemed unaffected, wandering the aisles and looking at the jars of candy with longing. Here. Silas dropped a penny on the counter. Give my daughter a peppermint stick. Martha looked like she'd swallowed something sour, but she handed over the candy. Wren took it with a brilliant smile. Thank you, ma'am. Martha didn't respond. They left the store with their supplies and their dignity, though both felt bruised. That was hard, Kaya said quietly once they were outside. Yeah. It's going to happen again. I know. She looked at him, her eyes searching. Are you still sure about this? About us? Silas stopped. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Listen to me. I don't care if every person in this territory hates us. I don't care if they spit on us, curse us, try to run us off. You're my wife. Wren's my daughter. And nothing is going to change that. Kaya's eyes filled with tears. Silas, I love you. That's the beginning and the end of it. Everything else is just noise. She pulled him close and kissed him right there in the middle of the street in front of everyone who was watching. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered something ugly. But Silas didn't hear any of it. All he heard was his own heart beating strong and true. Elijah found them at the trading post an hour later, loading their supplies onto the horses. I'm sorry about Martha, he said. She's always been small-minded, but that was worse than usual. It's not your fault, Silas said. Maybe not, but I still hate seeing good people treated that way. Elijah glanced at Kaya, who was helping Wren mount the horse. She's strong, your woman. I can see why you fell for her. She saved my life, in more ways than one. Elijah nodded slowly. Hold on to that. It's rarer than gold out here. I intend to. They shook hands, and Elijah pressed something into Silas's palm, a small leather pouch. What's this? Medicine, from the Cheyenne healers. Elijah's voice dropped. For when the baby comes. Silas froze. What? Elijah's eyes widened. You didn't know. Silas looked at Kaya, who had gone very still on her horse. Her face had drained of color. Kaya. She didn't answer. Kaya, look at me. Slowly, she met his eyes. And in them, he saw the truth. When were you going to tell me? I wasn't sure. I didn't want to say anything until I was certain. Her voice trembled. I'm sorry. I should have. Silas was at her side in 3 strides. He pulled her down from the horse and into his arms. Are you happy? He asked, his voice rough. About the baby. Yes, but I was scared. Scared of how you'd react. Scared that it was too soon. Scared that... Stop. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. Stop being scared. This is the best news I've gotten since the day you agreed to stay. Really? Really? He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. A baby. Our baby. Kaya laughed through her tears. You're not angry. Angry, I'm the happiest man in Montana Territory. He placed his hand on her belly, still flat, but holding a future he never thought he'd have. We're gonna be parents. We already are parents. Wren piped up. I want a sister. Everyone laughed, the tension breaking like a fever. We'll see what we can do, little bird, Silas said. The ride home was different from the ride in. The ugly encounter with Martha still stung, but it was overshadowed by something bigger, something brighter. A baby. Their baby. Silas couldn't stop smiling. Even when his shoulder ached, even when the road got rough, even when dark clouds gathered on the horizon, he smiled. They were building something. Something real and lasting and good. And nothing was going to take that away from them. 2 weeks later, Silas woke to the sound of horses. He was on his feet before he was fully awake, grabbing his rifle and moving to the window. Dawn was just breaking, and in the gray light he could see riders approaching, 5 of them, maybe 6. Silas. Kaya's voice was thick with sleep. What is it? Stay inside. Keep Wren quiet. He stepped onto the porch, rifle raised, as the riders came into view. His heart nearly stopped. At the front of the group was a man in a U.S. Army uniform, a captain by the look of his insignia. Behind him rode 4 soldiers and 1 civilian, a thin, nervous-looking man in a black suit. Silas Brennan, the captain called out. Silas kept his rifle steady. Who's asking? Captain William Hayes, U.S. Army. The captain raised his hands, showing he meant no immediate harm. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to ask you some questions. About what? About the Apache woman living on your property. Silas's blood went cold. She's my wife. The captain's eyebrows rose slightly. Be that as it may, we've received reports that she may be a fugitive from the San Carlos reservation. She ain't from any reservation. Her tribe was massacred by buffalo hunters. She came here for shelter. I gave it to her. I understand, but there are procedures. The captain gestured to the civilian. This is Mr. Thomas Whitfield from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He has some questions. The thin man stepped forward, a leather satchel clutched to his chest. Mr. Brennan, if I could just speak with the woman in question. No. Sir, I must insist. And I must insist that you get off my property. Silas's voice was steel. My wife ain't a fugitive. She ain't from any reservation, and she ain't going anywhere. Whitfield's face flushed. You're obstructing federal business. I'm protecting my family. There's a difference. Captain Hayes held up his hand. Mr. Brennan, I understand your position. Truly I do. But if we don't resolve this properly, there could be consequences. Legal consequences. For who? For you. For your wife. For your daughter. The captain's voice softened. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to help you. Silas studied the man's face, looking for the lie. He didn't find one. You got 5 minutes, he said finally. And you stay on the porch. Nobody goes inside." He turned and called through the door. "Kaya, you better come out." Kaya emerged a moment later, her face calm but her eyes wary. She'd dressed quickly, her hair still loose around her shoulders. She looked every inch the warrior she was. Whitfield stared at her like she was a specimen in a museum. "You are Kaya, formerly of the Apache tribe." "I am Kaya. My tribe is dead." "And you have been living here with Mr. Brennan?" "Yes. He is my husband." Whitfield scribbled something in a notebook. "Were you ever registered at any reservation?" "No. My people lived free. We had no dealings with your government." "And you have a daughter?" "Yes, Wren. She is 6 years old." "The father?" Kaya's jaw tightened. "Dead. Killed by the same men who slaughtered our tribe." Whitfield made another note. "I see. And you are now with child." Silence fell like a stone. Kaya's hand moved to her belly. "That is none of your business." "I'm afraid it is. Any child born to an Indian mother is subject to— That child is mine." Silas stepped forward, putting himself between Kaya and the bureaucrat. "It'll be born on American soil to an American father. It ain't subject to nothing." Whitfield sputtered. "That's not how the law works." "Then maybe the law needs to change." Captain Hayes stepped in before things could escalate further. "Mr. Whitfield, I think we've gathered enough information for now." "But Captain, I said enough." Hayes's voice brooked no argument. He turned to Silas. "Mr. Brennan, I'm going to file a report stating that the woman known as Kaya is not a fugitive, that her tribe was destroyed by civilian violence, and that she is now legally married to an American citizen." Silas stared at him. "Why would you do that?" Hayes met his eyes. "Because I've spent 15 years fighting Indians on the frontier. I've seen things that would make your stomach turn, and I'm tired of it. Tired of the killing. Tired of the hatred." He glanced at Kaya, then back at Silas. "What you're building here, it's the future. Or it should be." Silas didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. "Thank you, Captain. Don't thank me yet. Whitfield will file his own report, and there are plenty of people in Washington who think the only good Indian is a dead Indian. This might not be over. Then we'll face whatever comes." "I believe you will." Hayes tipped his hat. "Good luck, Mr. Brennan, ma'am." The soldiers rode away, taking the sputtering bureaucrat with them. Silas watched until they were out of sight. Then he turned to Kaya, who was trembling despite her brave face. "It's okay," he said, pulling her close. "They're gone. For now." Her voice was muffled against his chest. "But they'll come back. People like that always come back. Then we'll deal with them. Together." She pulled back and looked at him with wet eyes. "How do you do it?" "Do what?" "Stay so calm, so sure, when everything is falling apart around us." Silas touched her face gently. "Because I've already lost everything once. And I survived. Whatever comes next, we'll survive that too." Kaya took a shaky breath. "I love you, Silas Brennan." "I love you too. Now come inside. Wren's probably scared half to death." They found Wren hiding under the bed, clutching her cornhusk doll. "Are the bad men gone?" she whispered. "They're gone, little bird." Silas lifted her out and held her close. "And they ain't coming back." "Promise?" "Promise." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But sometimes lies were kinder than truth. Sometimes you had to believe in a better world before you could build one. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the three of them sat on the porch together. Kaya leaned against Silas's shoulder, her hand resting on her belly. Wren was curled in his lap, already half asleep. "What should we name the baby?" Wren murmured. Silas looked at Kaya. "What do you think?" Kaya considered for a moment. "If it's a girl, I'd like to name her after my mother. Ahiga." It means she fights. And if it's a boy, Kaya smiled softly, then you choose. Silas thought about it, thought about all the names he could give a son, names that carried history weight meaning. Daniel, he said finally. After my father. He was a good man, the best I ever knew. Daniel. Kaya tested the word. I like it. Ahiga or Daniel. Wren yawned. Both good names. Silas kissed the top of her head. Go to sleep, little bird. Not tired. Sure you're not. Within minutes, she was snoring softly against his chest. Kaya laughed quietly. She fights sleep like she fights everything else. Wonder where she gets that from. Certainly not from me. Silas grinned. Right. You're the picture of surrender. She swatted his arm lightly. Watch yourself, husband. Yes, ma'am. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Silas. Yeah. Do you think we'll be happy? He looked at her. This woman who had been through hell and kept going, who had chosen him, when she could have chosen to walk away, who was carrying his child and raising her own and building a life in a world that didn't want them. I think we already are, he said. Kaya smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise. Yeah, she agreed. I think we are too. The night wrapped around them like a blanket, soft and warm and full of promise, and for the first time in a very long time, Silas Brennan looked forward to tomorrow. The months passed faster than Silas thought possible. Summer blazed across the territory, turning the prairie gold and the sky an endless aching blue. Kaya's belly grew round, and with it something in the cabin grew too, a warmth that had nothing to do with the season. Wren had taken to talking to the baby every night before bed, pressing her lips to her mother's stomach and whispering secrets that made Kaya smile and Silas pretend not to hear. I told her about the horses today, Wren announced one evening. She kicked when I mentioned Clara. I think she likes horses. Silas raised an eyebrow. You're sure it's a girl? I just know. Wren shrugged with the absolute certainty only a child could muster. Sisters know things. Kaya caught Silas's eye over their daughter's head, and they shared a private smile. Things weren't perfect. They never would be. Martha Holloway still refused to serve them, and there were whispers in town. Ugly whispers that followed them like shadows. But for every person who turned away, there was another who nodded in greeting. For every door that closed, another opened. Elijah had been right. Most folks minded their own business, and the ones who didn't. Well, Silas had a rifle and a reputation. That went a long way in Montana Territory. One morning in late August, Silas rode into Elk Creek alone. Kaya was too far along to make the journey comfortably, and Wren had refused to leave her mother's side. I'll be back before dark, he promised. You better be. Kaya kissed him hard. I don't like sleeping alone. Neither do I. He made it to town by mid-morning and headed straight for Elijah's trading post. The bell jangled as he walked in, and Elijah looked up from behind the counter with a grin. Silas. How's the family? Growing. Kaya's due any week now. Nervous. Terrified. Elijah laughed. That's how you know you're doing it right. He slid a cup of coffee across the counter. What brings you to town? Supplies, the usual. Silas took the coffee gratefully. And I wanted to check if there's been any more trouble from Washington. Elijah's face sobered. Nothing official, but there's been talk. What kind of talk? The kind that makes me nervous. Elijah leaned closer, lowering his voice. Word is, there's a new Indian agent coming to the territory. Name's Josiah Crane. Has a reputation for being thorough. Thorough how? The kind of thorough that ends with families torn apart and children sent to boarding schools. Elijah's jaw tightened. He's supposed to arrive sometime next month. Silas felt the blood drain from his face. They can't do that. Wren's my daughter now. The baby will be half white. Since when has that mattered to men like Crane? Silas's hands curled into fists. I won't let them take my family. I know you won't. But you need to be smart about this. Elijah reached under the counter and pulled out a sheaf of papers. I've been doing some digging. There's a judge over in Helena named Samuel Redwood. He's fair. More importantly, he's ruled in favor of mixed families before. Silas took the papers. What are these? Legal documents. Adoption papers for Wren. Marriage certificate for you and Kaya, a proper one recognized by the courts. Elijah met his eyes. If you want to protect your family, you need to make it official. Make it so airtight that even a man like Crane can't touch you. Silas stared at the papers in his hands. How did you get these? I have friends in places you wouldn't expect. Elijah smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My mother was Cheyenne. My father was Irish. I've spent my whole life navigating between two worlds. You learn who your allies are. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Just fill out those papers and get them to Judge Redwood before Crane arrives. Elijah clapped him on the shoulder. And take care of that family of yours. They're special. I know. Silas left Elk Creek with more than supplies. He left with hope fragile and uncertain, but hope nonetheless. He rode hard, pushing his horse faster than was wise, driven by an urgency he couldn't explain. Something felt wrong, something in the air in the pit of his stomach. When he crested the final hill and saw the cabin in the distance, his blood turned to ice. There was a wagon in the yard, and strangers. Silas spurred his horse into a gallop, his heart pounding against his ribs. As he got closer, he could make out 3 figures, 2 men in dark suits and a woman in a gray dress. And Kaya standing on the porch with Wren behind her, her face set in a mask of fury. What the hell is going on here? The strangers turned at his approach. One of the men, tall, thin, with a face like a hatchet, stepped forward. Mr. Brennan, I presume I'm Josiah Crane, Indian agent for the Montana Territory. Silas dismounted and placed himself between Crane and his family. You're early. I prefer to be thorough. Crane's smile was thin and cold. I received reports of an unregistered Indian woman and child living on this property. I'm here to assess the situation. There's nothing to assess. This is my wife and my daughter. They ain't going anywhere. That remains to be seen. Crane produced a document from his coat. I have the authority to remove any Indian child from an unsuitable environment and place them in a government-approved school. Unsuitable. Silas's voice shook with barely contained rage. This is their home. I'm their family. You're a white man harboring Indians without proper documentation. Crane's eyes flicked to Kaya's swollen belly. And I see there's another one on the way. That child will also fall under my jurisdiction. Kaya stepped forward, her dark eyes blazing. You will not touch my children. Ma'am, I understand this is difficult. You understand nothing. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. I have watched my people slaughtered. I have buried my husband. I have walked through blood and fire to keep my daughter safe. And you think a piece of paper gives you the right to take her from me? Crane's smile faltered. The law. Your law killed my tribe. Your law stole our land. Your law means nothing to me. Kaya took another step forward, and Crane actually stepped back. But I will tell you what does mean something. This man. She pointed at Silas. He saved my daughter's life. He saved mine. He has been more of a father to Wren in 6 months than your law has been to any Indian child in 100 years. Eloquent, but ultimately irrelevant. Crane regained his composure. I will return in 3 days with proper escort. If the child is not prepared for transfer, she won't be. Then I will have no choice but to use force. Silas stepped so close to Crane that their noses nearly touched. You bring force to my door, and I'll show you what force really looks like. Crane's eye twitched. Threatening a federal officer is a serious offense, Mr. Brennan. So is threatening a man's family. Now get off my land." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Crane smiled a cold reptilian smile that made Silas's skin crawl. "3 days, Mr. Brennan. Make your peace." He turned and walked to the wagon. The woman and the other man followed, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. Silas watched them go, his hands trembling with rage. "Silas!" Kaya's voice was barely a whisper. "What are we going to do?" He turned to face her. This woman who had been through so much, who deserved peace and safety and joy. And he made a decision. "We're going to fight." The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Silas sent word to Elijah, who arrived the following morning with 2 Cheyenne men and a half-dozen rifles. "Friends of mine," Elijah explained. "They've dealt with men like Crane before. I can't ask them to fight my battles." "You're not asking. They're offering." Elijah's face was grim. "What happens to your family today happens to all our families tomorrow. We stand together or we fall apart." Silas looked at the Cheyenne men warriors, by the look of them with hard eyes and harder hands. "Thank you," he said. The oldest of the warriors nodded. "We do not fight for you, white man. We fight for the woman and the child. They are kin now. That makes them worth dying for." Kaya emerged from the cabin and the warrior's face softened. "Sister," he said in Apache, "we heard what happened to your tribe. Our hearts grieve for your loss." Kaya's eyes filled with tears. "You speak my language." "My grandmother was Apache. She taught me before the white man's schools took the words from our mouths." He touched his chest. "But they live here still." Kaya reached out and clasped his hand. "Thank you for coming. Thank us when it's over." That night, Silas lay awake beside Kaya, his hand resting on her belly. He could feel the baby moving, a flutter of life beneath his palm. "Are you afraid?" Kaya asked. "Yeah. Me too." She turned to face him. "But I'm not sorry. No matter what happens tomorrow, I'm not sorry for any of it." "Neither am I." She kissed him soft and sweet and full of everything they couldn't say. "I love you, Silas Brennan." "I love you too, Kaya Brennan." She smiled at the name, her name now in this strange new world they were building together. "Get some sleep," she whispered. "Tomorrow will come soon enough." But Silas didn't sleep. He watched her instead, memorizing the curve of her face, the rhythm of her breathing, the way her hand curled protectively around her belly. He would die before he let anyone take this from him. Dawn broke gray and cold. Silas was on the porch before the sun cleared the horizon, his rifle in his hands, his eyes fixed on the road. Behind him, Elijah and the Cheyenne warriors took their positions. Kaya was inside with Wren, her own pistol loaded and ready. They didn't have to wait long. Crane's wagon appeared around noon, but this time it wasn't alone. A dozen armed men rode behind it, hired guns by the look of them. Hard men with dead eyes and no conscience. "That's more than I expected," Elijah muttered. "Yeah." Silas's jaw tightened. "Me too." Crane dismounted and walked toward the cabin, his hands raised in a mockery of peace. "Mr. Brennan, I see you've brought reinforcements. How quaint." "Go home, Crane. This ain't gonna end the way you think." "On the contrary, it's going to end exactly the way I think." Crane gestured to his men. "You're outnumbered, outgunned. Surrender the woman and children and nobody has to die." "Nobody's surrendering anything." "Then you leave me no choice." Crane raised his hand to signal. The first shot came from somewhere behind the hired guns. One of them pitched forward off his horse, dead before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Silas dove behind the porch railing as bullets tore through the air. Elijah was already returning fire, his rifle cracking again and again. The Cheyenne warriors moved like shadows, appearing and disappearing their shots, finding their marks with deadly precision. "Where the hell did that shot come from?" Crane was screaming. "Who's shooting?" Silas didn't have time to wonder. A hired gun was charging the porch and Silas put him down with 2 shots to the chest. Another one came around the side of the barn. Kaya's pistol barked from the window, and the man crumpled. The fight was brutal and short. Within minutes, half of Crane's men were dead or wounded. The rest were retreating, their nerve broken by the unexpected resistance. But Crane wasn't done. He grabbed something from the wagon, a torch already lit, and hurled it toward the cabin. No! Silas lunged for it, but he was too far away. The torch arced through the air, trailing smoke and flame. And then a figure burst from the cabin, catching the torch in mid-flight and hurling it away into the snow, where it sputtered and died. Captain William Hayes. What the? Silas stared in disbelief. Hayes turned to face Crane, his face like thunder. Josiah Crane, you are under arrest for inciting violence, attempted murder, and gross misconduct. You can't do this. Crane's face was purple with rage. I have authority. Your authority ended the moment you tried to burn down a cabin with a pregnant woman inside. Hayes's voice was ice. There are lines, Crane, even in the territories, and you just crossed every single one of them. Two soldiers emerged from the tree-line rifles trained on Crane and his remaining men. How? Silas managed. How did you know? Hayes smiled grimly. I told you I was tired of the killing. When I heard Crane was coming for your family, I made sure to arrive first. He nodded toward the tree line. That first shot, one of my men. Figured we'd even the odds a bit. Silas didn't know what to say, so he did the only thing that made sense. He extended his hand. Thank you, Captain. Hayes shook it firmly. Don't thank me yet, there's still paperwork. But his eyes were warm, and Silas knew that this man, this unlikely ally, had just given them a chance at a future. The aftermath was chaos and relief in equal measure. Crane and his remaining men were taken into custody. The wounded were tended to. The dead were buried, some with more ceremony than others. Through it all, Silas kept Kaya close his hand, never leaving hers. It's over, she said when the last of the soldiers had ridden away. It's really over. For now. Silas kissed her forehead. But there'll be more fights. More people who want to tear us apart. I know. She looked up at him, her dark eyes shining. But we'll face them. Together. Together. 3 weeks later, Kaya went into labor. It happened at night, just as summer was giving way to fall. Silas was out checking on the horses when he heard Wren screaming from the cabin. Father? Father, come quick! He ran faster than he'd ever run in his life. Kaya was on the bed, her face twisted in pain, her hands gripping the sheets so hard her knuckles were white. It's time, she gasped. The baby's coming. Silas had helped birth horses and cattle. He'd delivered his own son years ago in a cabin not so different from this one. But nothing had prepared him for the terror of watching the woman he loved in pain. What do I do? He asked, hating how helpless he sounded. Boil water, get clean cloths, and stay with me. Kaya's voice broke on the last word. Don't leave me, Silas, please. Never. He took her hand. I'm right here. I ain't going anywhere. The hours that followed were the longest of Silas's life. Wren was a trooper fetching water and cloths and holding her mother's hand when Silas needed both of his. Kaya fought through the pain with a strength that left him breathless. And finally, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, a baby's cry filled the cabin. It's a girl, Silas said, his voice breaking. Kaya, it's a girl. Kaya laughed and sobbed at the same time, reaching for the tiny, squalling bundle in his arms. Let me see her. Let me hold her. Silas placed the baby in her mother's arms and watched as Kaya's face transformed into something radiant, exhausted and tear-stained, but radiant. Ahiga, Kaya whispered, stroking the baby's downy black hair. My little fighter. Wren crowded close, her eyes wide with wonder. She's so small. She'll grow. Silas put his arm around his older daughter. You both will. Wren looked up at him, her face serious. I'm a big sister now. Yeah, little bird, you are. I'm gonna teach her everything. How to ride horses, how to catch butterflies, how to make father laugh. Silas's heart felt like it might burst. I'm counting on it. Kaya looked at her family, her husband, her 2 daughters, the life they'd built against all odds, and she smiled. We did it, she said softly. We really did it. Yeah. Silas kissed her forehead, then Ahiga's, then Wren's. We did. The days that followed were filled with the chaos of a new baby, sleepless nights, endless feedings, and more love than Silas had thought possible. Elijah came by with gifts from the Cheyenne community. Captain Hayes sent a letter of congratulations, along with official documentation confirming Wren's adoption and the family's legal status. Crane's been reassigned, Hayes wrote, to a desk job in Washington. He won't be bothering anyone again. But the best gift came from Wren, who presented Ahiga with a corn husk doll she'd made herself, just like the one she'd carried from her old life. This is so she knows she has a sister, Wren explained solemnly, no matter what. Kaya pulled her close, tears streaming down her face. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky too. Wren looked at Silas, then at her mother, then at the tiny baby in her arms. We're all lucky, because we're a family. And in that moment, Silas understood something he'd been struggling to grasp for months. Home wasn't a place. It wasn't 4 walls and a roof. It wasn't land or cattle or anything you could touch. Home was this woman, these children, this impossible, improbable, perfect family. He'd lost everything once, his wife, his son, his reason for living. And then one frozen morning, he'd found a child in the snow. And that child had led him to a woman who'd been shattered just as badly as he had. And together, they'd built something new, something worth fighting for, something worth dying for, something worth living for. Fall settled over the territory, painting the world in shades of amber and gold. Silas stood on the porch one evening watching the sun set behind the mountains. Kaya came to stand beside him, Ahiga cradled in her arms. What are you thinking about? She asked. The future. What about it? He turned to look at her, this fierce, beautiful woman who had walked through fire to find him. I'm thinking it looks pretty good from here. Kaya smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. Yeah, it does. Wren burst out of the cabin full of energy as always. Father, Mother, look what I found. She held up a small bird, a wren of all things that had apparently gotten tangled in the chicken wire. Can we keep it? She asked breathlessly. No, little bird. Wild things need to be free. Silas knelt beside her. But we can help it. Come on, I'll show you. Together they walked to the edge of the property, and Silas showed Wren how to gently untangle the bird's wing from the wire. When it was free, it hopped onto Wren's palm and stayed there for a moment, looking up at her with bright black eyes. Then it flew away, rising higher and higher, until it was just a speck against the vast Montana sky. Goodbye, little bird, Wren whispered. Silas put his hand on her shoulder. You did good. Father. Yeah. Are we going to be okay forever? Silas looked back at the cabin where Kaya stood with Ahiga in her arms, both of them bathed in the golden light of sunset. Nobody knows about forever, little bird, but I know about today, and today we're more than okay. Today we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Wren nodded slowly, absorbing this. Then she took his hand. I'm glad you found me in the snow. Silas felt his eyes burn with tears he refused to shed. Me too. Wren. Me too. They walked back to the cabin together, hand in hand. And as the last rays of sunlight faded and the stars began to emerge, Silas Brennan looked at his family, his wife, his daughters, the life they'd carved out of wilderness and hope. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had found his home. Not in the land, not in the cabin, not in any place on any map. His home was in the sound of Wren's laughter, in the warmth of Kaya's embrace, in the soft cry of baby Ahiga, announcing her presence to the world. His home was in the choice they'd all made to stay to fight to love against all odds. Love doesn't need to begin with a promise or be sealed by ceremony. It grows in the quietest moments. A hand tending a wound, a fire lit against the cold, a child saying "Father" for the first time. True love isn't loud. It doesn't demand. It simply asks that two broken people be brave enough to open their hearts again. And when they choose to stay not out of duty, but because their hearts lead them there, that is love strong enough to outlast any winter. That is love strong enough to build a home. Silas Brennan had lost everything once, and then he found something better. He found a family. He found a future. He found a love worth fighting for. He found his way home, and he was never letting go. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that it's never too late for love, never too late for hope, never too late to find your way home, then leave a comment below and tell me. Subscribe to my channel, and I promise to keep bringing you tales from the Old West, stories of courage and love and second chances. Because in the end, that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? A place to belong, a family to hold, a home. Until next time, my dear listeners, I love you all.